All right, boys and girls, welcome to our newest read aloud. We're going to be having Mysteries According to Humphrey. We're continuing with our mystery theme. Many of you have probably read one of the books in this series. This is part of a series. It's by Betty G. Burney. And let's just take a look at that cover. We can see Humphrey on the front of the cover. We see that he's wearing his little Sherlock Holmes hat and has his magnifying glass. Looks like he's got a basket of apples there. And we see lots of words around him. It says Sherlock Holmes is smart, smart, smart. We know Sherlock Holmes is a famous detective, so I'm sure Humphrey is some sort of detective in this book. It says, look for clues, clues, clues. The mystery of Mr. E. Where is Mrs. Brisbane? So I definitely think this book is going to contain several mysteries within it. Maybe not one long mystery, but lots of mysteries. I don't know. That's my prediction. Let's see if I'm right. Okay, let's take a look now at our table of contents. All right, now listed in our table of contents, we see each chapter is the title of a different case, it looks like. Chapter 1, The Case of the Mysterious Detective. So it does look like maybe there's going to be 14 different mysteries within this book. All right, so kind of like Encyclopedia Brown, how Encyclopedia Brown had lots of different mysteries within one book. Okay, well, let's see. We're going to be starting off on page 1. Now, I will have a picture of each of the pages so you can easily follow along here. You might want to have your questions out. Let me just flip back to those questions. You should have this in your packet of papers that you picked up from school. If you don't have it, your parents can easily print it off of Schoology, or you could just write your answers on notebook paper, boys and girls. That's fine too. But you might want to have these questions out so that you can be listening for the answers as we are reading chapter 1 today. All right, so let's start off. I may have to stop this recording and start again if it gets too long. All right, chapter 1, The Case of the Mysterious Detective. Outside, the sun was shining, but inside room 26 of Longfellow School, it was a dark and stormy night. Mrs. Brisbane, our teacher, was reading us a fur-raising mystery story from a big red book. A mystery is like a puzzle. It can be something unsqueakably scary, like a thing that goes thump in the night. All right, boys and girls, let's stop for a moment. What do we call words like thump? If you said onomatopoeia, you are correct. Remember, onomatopoeia means sound words. All right, let's continue. Or a mystery can be something ordinary, like what happened to Mrs. Brisbane's glasses. Sometimes our teacher can't find her glasses when they're right on her head. Even though my classmates and I can read by ourselves, we love having Mrs. Brisbane read to us. It is surprising that I can read because I am the classroom hamster, but I am also smart, smart, smart if I do say so myself. As I listened, I climbed up to the tippy top of my cage and looked out at my classmates. When school started in September, they were all mysteries to me. I didn't realize that at the beginning of the school year, a new class comes in, a class of total strangers. It's taken me a while to figure out why Hurry Up Harry is late so often and why Slow Down Simon moves so fast. I learned that rolling Rosie's wheelchair doesn't slow her down a bit. And I learned that helpful Holly is sometimes too helpful Holly. Now it's October. I'm still getting to know some of the students who sit on the opposite side of the room from my cage. I haven't figured out why "Do it now" Daniel D. always puts things off and why "Stop talking" Sophie Kaminsky has so much trouble being quiet. In time, I hope I'll solve those mysteries too. I guess being a classroom hamster is a lot like being a detective. A detective is someone who solves mysteries. The story Mrs. Brisbane was reading about a detective named Sherlock Holmes, who was one smart human. In his picture on the cover of the red book, he wore a strange-looking hat. Mrs. Brisbane said it was called a deerstalker hat. She also said he sometimes played the violin to help him think, which made me wish I had a violin of my own. Ooh, now let's stop for a moment, boys and girls. Remember that hat that Humphrey was wearing on the cover? I wonder if that is the exact same hat that Sherlock Holmes wore that Mrs. Brisbane said is called a deerstalker hat. I bet it is. I can infer that that probably is a deerstalker hat. All right, let's continue reading. There were a lot of stories in the book. This puzzling mystery had to do with a man with flaming red hair named Mr. Jabez Wilson. He came to Sherlock Holmes and explained something strange that had happened to him. It started when he saw an ad in the newspaper for a job that was only for a person with flaming red hair. I guess that's why the name of the story was The Adventure of the Red-Headed League. Mrs. Brisbane asked us, why would they only want someone with red hair? Kelsey Kirkpatrick's hand shot up so fast she almost hit just Joey, who sat next to her. Please be careful, Kelsey, Mrs. Brisbane said. So what do you think? Kelsey said, they must be looking for somebody smart. Everybody knows that redheads are the smartest people. My classmates all laughed because Kelsey has red hair. Naturally, she would think red-haired people are the smartest. Mrs. Brisbane laughed too. Yes, Kelsey, some red-haired people are very smart, but I don't think that was the reason. She asked if we had any other ideas. I thought and thought. If the job needed someone smart, I think they might look for a clever hamster, like me. Paul Fletcher, whom I think of as Small Paul, had another idea. Maybe they needed someone who looked like someone else. A different person with red hair, he suggested. That's an interesting idea, Paul. You'd make a good detective, Mrs. Brisbane said. Paul Green, whom I think of as Tall Paul, raised his hand. Maybe the person has to wear a costume, he suggested, and they need red hair to go with the costume. Excellent idea, Mrs. Brisbane said. Thomas T. True looked puzzled, and he raised his hand. Is this a true story? He asked. I mean, is Sherlock Holmes a real person? Mrs. Brisbane smiled. No, it's a made-up story, but Sherlock Holmes almost seems like a real person, and he's been popular for many years. When he solves a mystery, he looks for clues. She explained that a clue is information that helps you solve a mystery, and Sherlock Holmes was always looking for clues, because a good detective always has to be sharp-eyed. Now, let's stop for just a moment, boys and girls. Sharp-eyed. What do you think that means? Do you think it literally means their eyes have to be sharp, like a knife is sharp, or like scissors are sharp? Does that make any sense? No. This is going to be an example of something that is not literal, right? It's not really sharp-eyed. So what do you think that means? If it's not sharp as in a knife is sharp, what does that mean, sharp-eyed? Think for just a moment. I think because the sentence says Sherlock Holmes was always looking for clues, because a good detective always has to be sharp-eyed, it means that he's always looking really carefully and really closely for clues. I think sharp-eyed has to be looking carefully and closely. All right, now boys and girls, I'm going to stop the recording here and start it back up with the rest of this chapter.